We just started fogging. Well, to give you a little bit more background, we originally had tried to market this to medical facilities, just could not get any traction. A lot of you know that story. So just almost out of just pure panic and being broke, we just said, well, let's just start fogging homes and see where we go. But this is the start. And so we started to...
the battery might have gone down. Is the switch on it?
Yeah.
The battery might have...
Is it? Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear from that
Yes,
one.
no.
Huh.
We turned that one off because it's too loud for those rooms.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so anyway, we started fogging homes, and we were doing a lot of work up in Park City because real estate agents, we talked to them and said, look, if you have an inspector come in and inspect the home and it's got mold in the attic, we can fix that problem in a hurry and you can save the sale. So that's where most of our work was coming through. And, you know, we weren't doing a ton of work, but we were kind of paying the bills at that point. And I get a call from a lady in Layton, and she said, look, I've researched what you guys do, and you need to come fog my home because my daughter has a rash. And I was like, no, you probably got the wrong guy here. And she goes, no, seriously, I've researched what you do. You are the answer to her problem. And so I said, look, I'll come fog your home, but there's no guarantees on what's going to happen with your daughter. I have no idea. And so, anyway, long story short, we went and fogged her home. 2 weeks later, she calls and she says, she was kind of a weird lady, but she says, hey, I told you so. And I was like, what? And she said, my daughter was completely better. And I said, oh, that's awesome. And she said, so because of that, I have an appointment for you to go see my doctor. And I thought, I have no interest in going to see your doctor. But she said, no, seriously, Mike, she needs to know what you're doing. She said, I've actually paid for the appointment. Just meet me down in Provo for the doctor's appointment. So I went down there, and that's the first time I've ever met with Julie Davis and Dr. Wright. Julie Davis is like I think she's a health practitioner. I think she calls herself a nutritionist, but she does the biomeridian system. So I first started talking to Julie and explaining what we do. And it was really eye-opening for me. She started to cry. And I said, what? You know, still, number one, I didn't know why I was in that doctor's office. And, you know, it was just a weird situation. And she said, no, Mike, what you're onto here is going to change people's lives. She said, does this truly work? And I said, no, I know it works. It cannot not work. And she says, you cannot believe how many people I've had to tell, you got to leave your home. Just walk out and leave everything behind until we find out about this. She says, actually, I feel really bad because now that I found out you've been around, you know, we could have saved a lot of people's homes. So that's the first time I met Julie Davis, and that's the first time I was ever exposed to the idea that mold really makes you sick, as well as mold is an issue in your home. I had no idea when we got into this that mold was such an issue with your health. And so, in that same office is a Dr. Jeffrey Wright. So I went from Julie's office and talked to her about what we do, and she said, I need cards, I need pamphlets, I need everything you've got. I went from there across the little clinic there to talk to Dr. Wright. And he was a tough sell. He said, okay, explain what's in your stuff. And I said, you know, it's acetic acid and hydrogen peroxide. And okay, what's in your other stuff? And I told him. He says, I don't see how that's going to work. I said, no, you need to understand it gets so foggy in the home. Sometimes you can't see your hand in front of your face. And so he was at least open to it. So he didn't send us any work right away, but Julie did. And Julie started reporting back to Jeff about, you know, these amazing case studies where people are getting better just by fogging their home. So that started me on kind of a research trail of, okay, what on earth is mold doing to people's health? And I guess that's why we're here today. One thing I need to caution everybody is we are not doctors. Don't go there with people Don't try to diagnose them. Don't just be armed with a lot of knowledge. If they ask you, you can tell them, but don't. I mean, if they're like, you know, my symptoms are this and this and this, don't diagnose it. Yes, you got mold toxin illness. You know, just it may be mold. We've seen it before, and just be real careful with that. You're opening yourself up to some liability there, and just be careful. So I've always said to our guys, just be armed with the knowledge. Know the subject as well as the patient or the customer knows the subject. Oops. Okay, we talked a little bit in the last class about mycotoxins. Mycotoxins and VOCs, in my mind, they're kind of the same thing. They're not, but in my mind, they are. Ochratoxin, aflatoxin, and trichothecenes. Trichothecenes come off of Stachybotrys. Aflatoxin comes off of Aspergillus, I think. And ochratoxin comes off of Chaetonia. There are hundreds of different types of mycotoxins. These are the real, well, they're all bad, but these are the real bad ones. Trichothecenes are what North Korea makes nerve gas out of, or what they make nerve gas out of. It's that dangerous. It's bad, bad stuff. Mycotoxins and VOCs, the way I explain it is when mold lands on a surface and it secretes an enzyme to start to break that surface down. And then what that creates is a food source for the mold cell, right? So then it starts to absorb those nutrients, and then, just like anything else, it has to release gas. It's like a burp. So think of a VOC or a mycotoxin as that cell is just burping. It's off-gassing, right? That's your mycotoxins and your VOCs that are happening. A lot of people say, you know, do you guys kill mycotoxins? Well, that doesn't make sense. You can't kill something that's not technically alive. It's a compound. It's not a living organism. But the example, I use this in another class too, so I apologize if you've heard it already, but I use an example of a Volkswagen. Little Volkswagen is your mold spore moving around, and the exhaust coming out of it is the VOC. If you eliminate the Volkswagen, you've eliminated the VOCs. The VOCs are heavy in your home because you've got mold that's actively growing, ingesting food, and off-gassing constantly. Once you take care of the mold problem, the mycotoxins, if we don't kill them anyway, are eventually just going to air out, and the house will be safe again. I was at the American Industrial Hygienist Show last week, and a guy said, he was talking about mycotoxins, and he said, dilution is the solution to pollution. Did I say that right?
Dilution is a solution.
Dilution is the solution to, yeah.
Dilution.
And so anyway, what he was saying is that you get enough fresh air mixed with any environment, and it's going to be good. What you can't have is an environment where the mold is growing and actively has, you know, little energy cells throughout the house, and they're giving off mycotoxins. You will never get control of those mycotoxins until you get control of the mold. Also, this is a thing that isn't very well researched, but it's not just the mold that we're killing. Bacteria is also a big issue. Like mold has mycotoxins, bacteria has endotoxins. You ever been in a house where you see that pink stuff that's coming off of a shower curtain? A lot of people think that's mold. That's actually a bacteria. And it puts out endotoxins, which are just as harmful as, mold toxins. So it's not always just mold. And I think that's part of the magic of pure maintenance, is because there's a lot of things going on in the environment of a home that's really unhealthy if you have water damage. And we're addressing all of those. It's not just the mold we're addressing the bacteria as well. Okay, let's talk about symptoms. Anybody know any symptoms?
Respiratory?
Yeah, I have a funny story. It has nothing to do with this class. So I used to work for a company called Deluxe Check Printers, and we got this new plant manager, and she said, we need to have a meeting every week and talk about procedures. Okay, and I was one of the managers there. Okay, we'll talk about procedures. So we got together Week number 1. Okay, anybody know any procedures? Okay, meeting's over. That was our meeting. It was funnier when you were there. Okay, you said respiratory. What else out there? Anyone? Anyone? Allergies. Yep, allergies. I tell my wife that she thinks I'm nuts, but I tell my wife I can walk down the mall and tell you who has mold in their home by the little dark lines under their eyes. I really believe that. Let's get into some specific ones.
Brain fog.
Yeah, fatigue, poor exercise tolerance. People that say, look, I used to go out and run 4 miles a day and I can't do a mile without just being exhausted. That's a symptom. Memory, people just say, I just can't find the words, I can't concentrate. Sinus infections are huge. I've said this for years now. You show me someone with a sinus infection, I almost promise you they've got mold in their home. Even the CDC has come out and said 97% of sinus infections are related to indoor mold. When it drives me crazy when you have a customer and she says, yeah, I've had surgery 6 times for them to dig out the mold out of my sinuses. Like, you're just going to come home and reinfect yourself. It's not going to do any good. That's why you had 6 surgeries. Headaches, unexpected weight gain, unexpected weight loss, joint pain, loss of hair, asthma-like symptoms, itchy eyes, watery eyes, MS. We had a customer, we actually had 2 or 3 that were actually diagnosed with MS down in Utah County. And after we fogged them, completely symptom-free. I know it sounds nuts, but it's true. We talked about brain fog, Crohn's disease, numbness, tingling, shortness of breath, suicidal even, depression. Lyme's disease, we'll talk about Lyme's disease a little bit later in this, but Lyme's disease is a huge common denominator with mold and mold toxicity. Epstein-Barr syndrome, Meniere's disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, polymyositis. Let me stop right there and tell you a story. So, my mom died when she was 72 years old, and she died about, I'd started pure maintenance and had it running for about 2 years, and she passed away. And they never really knew what she had. They called it polymyositis, which is like a form of MS. But I was convinced those doctors didn't have a clue what mom had. They just a bunch of symptoms, and you got this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, go across and bring it down. Yep, that's polymyositis. There's no test that says you have MS. There's no test that says you have polymyositis. It's just a bunch of symptoms, right? So, as I started to learn more about mold, what happened is I went on a mission for the church. My mom was perfectly healthy. When I got home, she was in a wheelchair. And like I said, she died really young, at 72. I look back now, and I'm absolutely 100% sure my mom died from mold toxicity. Every home that we lived in growing up had water in the basement, water issues, and then I can remember when she started getting 50 or 60 years old, she started getting shocked. Every time she touched something in the house, she'd get shocked. And so my dad thought, well, let's install a humidifier and knock that, fix that. Well, that even made the mold worse, I'm sure, now looking back at it. And so anyway, I'm positive that's what my mom died from is mold toxicity. Anger, red eyes, allergies, depression, hormonal imbalance, low testosterone, gluten intolerance. This is an interesting one. I had a doctor tell me his whole rage was gluten intolerance. Where's Uena? Uena tries to tell us she's gluten intolerant, but we don't believe her. But this doctor told me, he said, the root of this is mold toxins in your body. And you cut out gluten, which is a food source for the mold in your body, and you feel better because you're not encouraging that mold growth. But he said the root problem is mold. It's not that you're allergic to gluten. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but the doctor told me that. Okay, let's talk about Lyme disease. I met a guy up in Park City. He was an MD. This is kind of funny. He actually lost his MD license because he was practicing some fringe medicine, which is just my kind of guy. But he was doing some Chinese medicine and some acupuncture and different things. He had a waiting list of like years to get to see him. But he found out about us and he called us. He said, I want to be a spokesman for you, but I also want you to fog my home for free. And so I spent about 6 hours one day just picking his brain on this. And he told me this about Lyme's disease. He said, if you show me someone that has Lyme's disease, I will show you they have mold in their home or in their workplace. He said, it's that common. And he said, what happens is everybody's born with, I think he called it a bucket to handle all your toxins. And as toxins come in, whether it's pollution or indoor air or stress or whatever, you start to fill up that bucket, right? Well, he said, millions and millions of people have the Lyme bacteria in their system, and they live a completely normal life and die never knowing they had Lyme's. But, he said, when you combine Lyme's with the mold, that bucket fills up just like that. There's like a synergistic effect to the bad with Lyme's and mold. And he said, and we have found it. A huge percentage of our customers have Lyme's disease. And so we've gotten on some Lyme's support groups and tried to get our name out to try to help people, but you'll run into that a lot. Yeah, the guy's name was Ken Wolkoff up in Park City. Great guy, just really, really smart. And let's see, static shock. I talked about my mom getting shocked. Is Tanya in here?
No.
Tanya Robbins that owns the Golden State license, I think. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Golden State.
We started treating Tanya's home years ago out in South Jordan. And that was one of her biggest complaints was the static shock. And at that time, I didn't know why. She just said, I get shocked. I said, I know that's a common thing for homes that have really high levels of mold. People get shocked. I said, I don't know why, but she said, we have to run the humidifier, otherwise I get shocked. I said, turn your humidifier off. Just trust me. Turn it off. Let us fog your home. I promise you won't get shocked. So she did it. And it stayed good for about a year, and then she called me and said, hey, I'm getting shocked again. So I went back and fogged her house again. But anyway, I always knew there was a correlation there between why are you getting shocked and you have high level of mold. So it took me a while, but I finally stumbled onto why it happens. If you have static shock, because of what how your body is handling the toxins, you have an antidiuretic hormone that is not functioning correctly. And so you drink, and this was my mom too. My mom would drink and drink and drink, and she could not satisfy her thirst. And there was actually one doctor that said to me, I was only in my 20s, but he said to me, I think your mom's just taking in too much water and she's flushing out all the good stuff. And that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But she would drink and drink and couldn't satisfy her thirst. And so what this article I found about that says, you end up with salt wash on your skin. So the salt creates a battery, and so when you touch an electrical appliance, you're getting shocked. So you've got a really, really high level of, well, you're drinking a ton of water, you're peeing out a lot, and then the salt just comes to your surface of your skin, and that's what's causing the shocks. And it's this hormone imbalance that is from mold. We've come so far now in this country on understanding mold, even though a typical MD is not going to be on board with this. Kind of the rest of the health world is really doing well with it. They actually have MRIs now that they can see a moldy brain from a non-moldy brain. Or a mold-affected brain from a non-mold-affected brain. The science has come so far that it's no longer a hunch that I think mold might be making them sick. It's solid science. So, here's a question. Why do some people recover quickly after mold exposure while others become very ill? We tell people all the time, it's like a peanut allergy. One kid may have a peanut allergy and the rest of your kids are fine. It's the same type of thing. 27% have a gene called the HLA-DR gene. Okay? 27% is a magic number. 1/4 of our population has a genetic problem with tagging toxins as an enemy. So what happens is, when a toxin comes into their body, that HLA-DR gene is supposed to tag it as an enemy, right? So the ochratoxin or the aflatoxin comes in their body, and whether they breathe it in or however it gets in their body, it gets in their system. That HLA gene is supposed to tag it. Okay, this is a bad guy, get rid of it. Sweat it out, pee it out, whatever you need to do, just get rid of it. That HLA-DR gene is not working correctly, then it allows those toxins to stay in your body. And those are the 27%. Actually, Julie Davis in Provo, she calls it the mold regenerators. I've heard other names too, but it's pretty well documented that it's 27% of the population. And it's mostly women, for whatever reason, that have this genetic makeup where they can't get rid of the mold toxin in their system. There's also a thing called mast cell activation. Let's talk about that for a minute. Oh, here's this first. This is put out by Dr. Shoemaker. Everybody know who Shoemaker is? He's kind of the premier doctor that started really understanding what's going on in people's bodies when they're exposed to mold. He's really the pioneer, and he's a little bit grumpy too. But somebody explained it to me. They said he's been fighting this battle for 30 years about going against mainstream medicine. He deserves to be a little grumpy, and he is. He's a little grumpy, but the guy is smart. There's only one thing I disagree with him on. So according to the biotoxin pathway, the body acquires biotoxins by toxin-producing organisms from food, water, air, or bug bites. Okay, and then it just goes through these different pathways. I'm not going to go through and read all these. I can send these to you if you want. In fact, I don't want to read any of it because we'll go down the rabbit hole we don't want to get out of. We can't get out of. So mast cells, important part of the immune system are your mast cells. When mast cells are activated, what happens is if you go outside and the pollen count is really high, what tells your nose to start to run is your mast cells. It's like, okay, there's a toxin coming in my body, my mast cells activate, and they start throwing out like histamines or whatever to keep that toxin from coming in my body. Your nose is going to plug up because your body doesn't want that toxin to come in anymore, right? You're going to start itching because you got a toxin and your body's sending a histamine to that spot and saying, scratch that off of my skin. It's that simple how it works. Well, these mast cells are really, really important. But if you're exposed to mold over and over and over again, your mast cells kind of go crazy. And it's just more than they can handle. And that's the people who get really, really sick as well. Let's see. So this is what are mast cells. They're found in all tissues of the body, especially around blood vessels, nerves, skin, lungs, digestive tract, mouth, nose, blood, brain barrier. They're triggered by, allergens, basically. Allergens, mold, fungus, toxins. It's because they've been to 5 or 6 different doctors and they just haven't been satisfied with the answers. They end up going to one of these, healthcare practitioners. But there's a few machines that those guys will use that are just amazing. Have you heard of the biomeridian machine? So there's a machine out there called the biomeridian machine. And it's like 2 probes, and it runs through a computer, right? And then when they start it, it sends a certain electrical charge through your body. And based on the resistance of that electrical charge, they can tell you what toxin is in your body. I was there once down at the same clinic, and Julie was talking to a lady who'd been really sick, and she had the biomeridian hooked to her, and she said, are you guys using a lot of Roundup or weed killer in your yard? And she's like, no, we never use that stuff, but our neighbors have this huge gravel driveway. They're constantly spraying that thing with something. And she said, that's what's making you sick. So these machines are incredibly accurate, and they'll pick up on mold toxins. So if we could be a resource to those healthcare practitioners that do this kind of work, you'll be a real help to everybody. I really thought Ryan would say, no, they don't touch on it in Mexico, but he blew it. We talked about Richie Shoemaker. His website is called Surviving Mold. Anytime you get a chance, there's a ton of really good information. The only place that I disagree with Richie Shoemaker is back in the 80s, in a book, he said fogging is not appropriate for mold removal. The problem was people were fogging, people still do. They fog with inferior equipment and inferior chemicals. And so, yeah, it doesn't work. Not until we came along with a little bit better system does fogging work. But like I say, he's a little grumpy, so it's not like you can call him and say, hey, Richie, let me pass this by you. So it's a little bit of a challenge. We've decided just keep doing what we do, make people well nationwide, and eventually he's going to come on board. I mentioned functional doctors are up to speed, homeopathic practitioners are up to speed. We even have in Utah, we have acupuncturists, chiropractors, just a whole bunch of different practices that send patients to us. Some of the big names are Jill Carnahan, I mentioned, in Colorado. She has her own website and a blog that's really, really good information. Like I said, Richie Shoemaker, and that website is called Surviving Mold. Take a look at that. And there's a Dr. Sandeep Gupta. He's kind of hard to understand, but he's really good. Look up any of his stuff. And also this Jeffrey Wright, who will be speaking to us tomorrow. He's actually the president of the Association of, I don't know, he's the president of something. I'll have it by tomorrow, but he is good. He's really good. So there's a lot of good resources out there. Just be really careful on who you go see. Until we came along, most of the mold doctors would literally tell them you need to walk out naked. You guys heard that term, walk out naked? Because doctors like Dr. Shoemaker said, if the house gets so bad full of mold, you can't fix it. It's on everything. It's on your clothes. It's on your furniture. It's on everything. Of course you can't get rid of it. And he's right. Traditional measures, of course they can't get rid of it. But he didn't know about pure maintenance. But I just wanted to make sure you understood. There's a lot of doctors out there that are still telling their people, you need to just leave. Leave your stuff behind, just walk out. And we can save that. We can save that customer a lot of heartache. This gets as deep as we want to go, and I don't think we're going to go there, but you can do your own research on the different typing and what the patient presents to the doctor. Just know that between the mast cells and that 27% of the population, people show all kinds of symptoms with this mold exposure. Anybody, I'm not even sure I got that right. EMFs, you familiar with EMFs? Anyone? Okay, electromagnetic frequencies, is that right? There's a study by a doctor in Switzerland. He had 2 petri dishes. He had a petri dish that he just left open, and he had a petri dish that he put, I think it's called a Faraday cage over it. Mm-hmm. You heard of those? Yeah. The air can still get to it, but it blocks the EMFs if you're getting to it. 600 times more mold spores in the non-covered petri dish. And he said he had a router and a cell phone and just like a normal home, but the EMFs, I read something where EMFs are 10,000 times higher in concentration than they were 10 years ago. So EMFs are a huge issue, and you need to know that because your customers need to know that.
Mike?
Yeah.
Can you repeat what you just said?
Yeah.
I didn't quite get that. I thought I got it, but I think...
About the test, the doctor?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a doctor in Switzerland. I'm trying to remember his name. I should have wrote it down, but anyway, you can look it up. But he had 2 petri dishes, and he just set them out in, I think he used his office, but he did mention that there was a router, a computer, and a cell phone in the area, right? You got a petri dish that nothing is covering it. Then you had a petri dish that, like a Faraday cage. It's just a cage that blocks all the EMFs, but the air can still circulate around there. The petri dish that was not protected from the EMFs 600 times more mold than the one that was protected. So these EMFs are making our houses so much moldier than they are in the beginning anyway. I was at a class down in Houston a couple of months ago, and the guy said, we've just really done this to ourselves. First thing we did is we decided, well, instead of plastering the walls, let's put paper up with sheetrock. So we got walls that are made out of paper, at least on the outside, so that's a good food source for the mold. And then we thought in the 70s, well, we're pretty smart, let's wrap these houses really tight because we're having an energy crunch right now. So now the houses can't breathe. So there's no fresh air to dilute any of the mold, and when you do have moisture, it can't dry out because it can't breathe. And then he says, and then we took it one step farther and stopped using hardwood for our homes and started using plywood, and then we took it a step farther and started using like particle board, and which is even more porous than plywood. And he said, we basically have done it to ourselves with our building materials. Everything holds the moisture much better than it ever has before, and nothing can breathe like it used to. And then throw in the EMFs on top of it, and we've just created an epidemic. We really have. So try to become a student of your industry. Like I say, study up all you can. If you guys have any questions, please call us. But it's a real deal, the health aspect of it. And the more you know, and like I say, you don't need to go into the customer and start saying, oh, your HLA-DR might not be typing right, Don't do that. But just be armed with the knowledge so that if they start to talk that language, you can at least join them and say, yeah, that probably is what's going on, And the other thing I want to say is just be really careful. This is kind of funny video. They will have some questions and answers, but be really careful what you look up on the internet. Oh, it's not going to work. Hang on. You guys hear that? Very well.
Make it large.
Oh, man. Can't hear it, can you? Anyway, it's, yeah, no, I think they're remote.
Someone should help them anything else.
This is really good.
Usually,
That's what she said.
No, that's not the one I wanted. That's really funny.
That's what she said. Okay.
That's not the one I wanted. Anyway, the one I wanted, that's pretty funny. The one I wanted, Michael Scott, you guys all watch The Office? Michael Scott said, Wikipedia is the most accurate. Anybody at any time can get on and put anything they want on Wikipedia. Therefore, it is the most accurate website you could possibly go to. So, I wanted to play that. That would have been cool because the point is, be careful what you read on the internet. In fact, my own dad thinks the world is flat. We didn't go to the moon, and a couple other things. Just because that generation was not ready for Google. That's what my daughter says. That generation was not prepared for Google.
Elvis is dead.
So anyway, let's open up any questions you have at all.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So obviously, at some point, because I've heard other mold remediators from other companies, and sometimes even in this company, they get a test back and it's so bad they call the client and they say, you know what? If I were you, I wouldn't even spend the night in this home. At what point would you advise a client to just go to a hotel until we can get there in fog?
It's just so hard. That's part of the challenge of this industry. It's just so hard to quantify anything. I mean, you've got different molds that are toxic and non-toxic, and we can't even necessarily tell from a sport trap whether that aspergillus is the aspergillus that is toxic, or it's just aspergillus that's kind of bad. You can't get that unless you do break it down to the DNA. And so it's just really hard, and everybody reacts to mold differently as well. Some people, just a little bit of mold makes them really sick. Some people, I walk in the home and I think, how on earth are you living here? And they're perfectly healthy. And so I just use a big dose of common sense. Realize this also, that didn't happen in the last 24 hours. You know, it's been that way to get that high, it's been that way for months and months. It needs to be taken care of right away, but I don't know that getting you out of there 24 hours before we fog is going to make all that much difference. Just use your common sense. Because what I tell this to customers all the time, I do not want to be an alarmist. That's just not how I am. I don't want to try to scare you into doing this. Just use common sense, and if you feel like it's dangerous and you feel like you're sick, yeah, maybe you should leave until we get it fogged. But, and that also brings up another point. 2 minutes, okay. Also brings up another point on, you know, we usually train everybody. Tell your customer to come back in an hour and a half. If you err on the longer side of that. Don't shorten that. Sometimes we're tempted to say, you can get back in an hour or so. Give us some time before the customer comes back to make sure they're safe. Okay? Yeah.
I'm going to change subject a little bit.
Okay.
We at the Orlando area, I Googled how many homeopathic doctors are in the area. There's 478. With this knowledge that you're sharing with us, how do you best tell us to approach these doctors to get their business?
Yeah, it's tough, and it's kind of a crapshoot. In fact, where was I last time training? Who was I training last? We went and did some cold. Oh, we were in San Antonio. No, not San Antonio. New Mexico, Albuquerque. And we didn't have a job that day, so we said, let's just do some cold calls. And so I went with them, and I did all the talking. And I'll just tell you how I approached it. I said, look, I went up to the front desk. I said, this is still neutral. I know I don't have an appointment. I've got nothing. But let me tell you what I do. Explain what Pure Maintenance does. I tell them we're just opening up in this area. We would love to be able to have just a few minutes to talk to the doctor and explain what we do. 3 times out of 5, they're really, really receptive. 2 times out of 5, they're like, yeah, give me your card. And you know they're not going to call you. But every once in a while, you hit somebody that's just gold. And we did that day in Albuquerque. We hit somebody, and she was like, oh, I got to know more. She says, that's all I do is mold patients. So just approach them and explain, you know, we're all over the country. We've been doing this for a long time, and people get well from this. And make sure they understand it's non-toxic. It addresses the health of the whole home. No heavy metals, no poisons. Nothing crazy, and it just flat out works, and they're pretty open to it most of the time. Like I say, some are just like, yeah, whatever. But the real good ones, like the ones that are speaking tomorrow, they grab right onto this. So, yeah.
Hey, Mike, you just said give more than an hour before they come back in. So how much more time and why?
Just every house airs out a little bit differently, and not as. Some are slower than others. Well, let's open up to the group. Trey, how long do you tell them to stay out after you're done?
It depends on the house. If you're doing a basement with no windows, it's going to take longer.
Yeah.
If you're doing a house that's nice weather and stuff, an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah. I think that's good. We fell in the trap until we told them for a while an hour, and I don't think that's quite enough. Not that it's dangerous, but it's uncomfortable to them.
Just because it's, I mean, we tell them it's not, because I've had this actual question. Well, if it's non-toxic, how come I can't just go in right when you're done?
Yeah, it's just uncomfortable. Yeah.
So it's not going to make
it's not
sick.
No.
So how about airing out the house after? How does that affect Everclear? Like how long? So are we waiting an hour after so that?
No, you can. As soon as you're done, you can start to air out the house. Because remember, you don't need dwell time on the Everclear. You're painting that onto a surface. So essentially, once you're done Everclear, you're done with your process. You can start. Well, what we usually do is what we test. Some guys like to come back a couple of days later and test. I don't know if it's the humidity or what it is in Utah. We're able to test that same day and get good tests. But we'll test first, and then we'll start to open up windows. So you can open up right after you're done. Just bear in mind, if you want to take a test, I would keep it close up until you take the test. And like I say, some guys have a lot better luck coming back a couple of days later to take the test. So. Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks guys. Let us know if you have any questions.